I said back in 1928 that two models were produced, one of which was significant. Well, the really significant one is the M-type Midget, which absolutely revolutionised sports car motoring. A, because when the M-type was introduced it was a sports car, and B, because its price of £185 was only £10 more than one would pay for a sporty Austin 7, which wouldn't go anything like as fast as the MG. The MG was capable of 65. You were lucky if you can get 45 out of an Austin 7 at that time, unless it was very heavily souped up. And of course the sports people very quickly got the idea that if the Austin 7 could be made to go faster, so could the MG, and so it proved. Several of them were running high-speed trial type events and Brooklands events during 1929 with varying degrees of success. Then in 1930 the team of three was run in the double 12 race, which was a 24-hour race like Le Mans, run in two stages on separate days. The Brooklands people didn't let people run racing cars through the night. And not only did they do extremely well, but they won the team prize, which won them far more kudos than having run the 1880 Mark III, which simply broke. But all of a sudden MGs had orders for hundreds of orders for MG midgets, and so they virtually went into MG midget production, and this is what precipitated the move to Abingdon, and they couldn't make them fast enough. The M-Type's a pretty crude little car. It's a Morris Minor with a lightweight body on it. But in its day, it was a highly effective motor car.
This is a pair of M-Types. This is a Roadster, and this is a businessman's coupe. This Roadster has unique history. First of all, it's only gone 6,000 miles from new. The story goes that this particular car was bought by a young man from Chicago who was in England on holiday, and he was in a taxi one day, and one of these cars overtook the taxi. So he told the driver to follow it, and they discovered they couldn't do it. The next day, again he was in a cab, and again one of these cars went by. This time they overtook the car and made the driver pull over, and he wanted to know what it was. So he told him it was an MG, and he could purchase it at University Motors. So he went over and bought this car, and he drove in England for about a week. And then he received a telephone call from his father in Chicago, and he says, "Come on home, a Wall Street crash." So he went underneath the dashboard and tried to turn the speedometer to put more mileage on it so it would come in as a used car. It came in New Jersey, port of New Jersey, and the custom officer was an Irish custom officer, and he made fun of the car coming off the boat in this net. And he couldn't believe that this was a motor car, the size of it, you know. And so this young fellow from Chicago slipped him a bottle of Scotch whiskey. So he wrote down on the invoice it was baggage. It came in as baggage. And if you ever want to see a car, original car, this is it. I mean, it's like I said, it's only gone 6,000 miles, maybe less. One day I decided to put the hood up, the bonnet, the hood, and it was all cracked in the back. I don't believe they ever had the hood up. So that's quite a little history behind this one. This is an N-type businessman's coupe. Cloth covered, restored by a young couple in London. I only bought it about 5 years ago. One little feature this car has is this little rear mudguard. Usually in a muddy season, from that front wheel, this, you've probably seen pictures that gets a lot of mud on here. Well, to open the door, this little cover comes out with the door, so it's clean for the passenger to get in and out. It has a sliding roof with cathedral windows with a little flip top back cover here for fresh air. It has a little unique section in the back here with a custom suitcase. There are supposed to be 4 known to exist out of 200 total production. They did a beautiful restoration, all original, to the mirror, Lucas mirrors.
This is a 1932 MG M-type Midget. This was the first model of Midget ever made, and the name sort of went on until they stopped Midget production in the 1980s. But this was the first Midget produced. They produced Midgets from 1929 to 1932. This is one of the very last cars made. They made about 150 after this car. This car over here is a 1930 M-type Midget, which was basically exactly the same car. As production went along, there was an awful lot of changes in the car. The very early cars had doors which opened with hinges at the back. All these cars have hinges at the front. As years went by, the wings changed. These have what you call house roof wings, or peaked wings. That car over there has round section wings. The wheels are different. The catches on the bonnet, on the hood are different. There's no metal in this body at all. It's wood framed. It's panelled in marine ply, and it's got a modern fabric on top of it. The original cars obviously were all. This should in fact have been a metal-bodied car. The last cars produced all had metal bodies. From about 1931 onwards, they had metal bodies. All the early cars had fabric bodies. When you sit in the cars, you don't actually look through the windshield. If you're of an average height, if you're about 5 foot nothing, it'd be okay. But if you're my height, you don't look through, you look over the top, where all the water gets you in the face. If you put the hood on, you can't see out, so you have to drive it with your head out. So all the water hits you in the face anyway. But so I just have a tonneau cover on this. I don't have a roof. It's not worth it. It goes quite well. Does about 50 on the flat. Only has a 3-speed gearbox, so it's very slow going up hills, especially steep hills. Gentle grades are okay, but steep hills are bad.
It's an M-type, which is 1931, built by Amingdon, the works, and then it went off to Wimbledon to have a Jarvis body on, which is instead of a boat tail, it's a very flat back, more modern and meant to be a luxury.
And what is different about the Jarvis body than what you usually see in this type car?
Well, most of them have a boat tail with a sort of budget lock and a boot, but this is an open boot and it's more of a Tourer, if you like.
And you were telling me that this one is all metal as opposed to...
Yeah, this one's one of 2, we believe, that has metal from the bonnet backwards rather than fabric from the bonnet backwards.
And how many cars like this were made?
About 36-ish, not sure.
How long have you had it?
Nearly 3 years now, 3 years in November.
Do you do the restoring yourself?
Most of it, yeah. And the easy bits,
What do you think the attraction, the appeal of the MG is? What is it to you?
Well, it's just the way they drive, the wind in the hair. What most people say, but they're very nice and they've got nice sounds and they're comfortable most of the time.
Well, there's not an M-type here now, but there was one here yesterday. It's parked over there. No one ever knew where the 833 came from. They couldn't understand. It wasn't an 8 horsepower motor. It would never develop 33 brake horse. They actually didn't know where it came from. And it was one of Cecil Kimber's little quirks. He used to enjoy catching the fast train from Oxford down to London, and the train he used to take was the 833. And so the M-type became known as the 833. And somewhere I have there's a racing version somewhere, which I think was an even quicker one, or a non-stop or something. I think that was the 845 or something. So I'm still looking. There's a couple of things I've got to find, one of which is a 1930 railway timetable from Oxford down to London, to find all these little things out.
Mind the post, Jeremy.
And this is Edsel Ford's M-Type, reported to be the first MG to make it to the North American continent. You can see it's kind of small compared to the other ones, but it certainly started quite the following. Ford made some modifications on the car. He obviously didn't like the SU fuel pump, so what he did is he took the SU fuel pump off and he put a Marvell on it. The SU carburetor, rather, would have looked like this, and I guess he just felt it wasn't as reliable. All of us MG people know it's a great carburetor. He made some other modifications. He didn't like to have the square key, so he put a little door handle from another one of the Fords on the back. It looks like a stinger on his little black and yellow project here. Taillight was also missing, and the taillight that should have been on the car was this taillight. Obviously, this wouldn't show very far, and it was a taillight. It didn't even come on with the brakes, so there were no brake lights on the particular car. The car's top speed should have been around 65 miles an hour. Having driven it at about 60, I can tell you, I don't think I'd ever want to go that extra 5 miles an hour. The weather equipment, as you can see, wasn't all that reliable. There was no windows. This is the way it was. And to get in and out of the car, you actually had to unbutton it unless you were a contortionist and could somehow or other get around underneath the hood. The car is essentially unrestored. It has probably the lowest mileage of any M out there. It has a little over 2,700 miles. This is the starter switch here. Depressing that would make it start up. The horn button is underneath. This is the spark retard, and it had a Rotax dash. And you can see it has 2,796 miles, and a few of those were just running around the field here. This is the choke. It has a 3-speed transmission plus reverse, and this is the choke here. The pedals are also kind of unique because the gas pedal is in the middle, the clutch is on the left, and the brake is on the right. And you can see how small it is. It runs great. It's a tight engine because obviously it hasn't been worn out yet. The leather in the interior is original, and as I say, all of the rest of the car is original. The boot of the car, the tire is the original spare. As you can see, it's kind of a tire that's been petrified to the frame. I think that it's going to stay like that forever and ever. These were the original tools. There's actually a little tool bin underneath the tire down here in the boat tail. And you can see that they had quite a nice assortment of tools. The You had to have pieces to run the jacks, and you can see that you also had to have a pretty complete set of tools as well as oil cans. This is an original owner's manual of the year of the car, but it did not come with the car. The spare was actually held down with straps. Your luggage would have gone on top of it. The top folds, the frame actually comes apart, similar to the way the early Bs did, and that all folds and goes into the boot. Security on the cars at that time wasn't really very great. This is the actual key. Lucas made the electronics. Again, a Lucas key was simply a little spade. It allowed you to turn it on or turn it off. Locking the car was not an issue. This is the original wiring harness. This is the petrol. You have your little curlicue here to allow it to breathe. Ford also changed the horn. This is the horn he put on. I guess he wanted to have something that was a little bit louder. And I think he probably put these little gizmos here. What they do is they actually arc the spark, and so when the car is running you can see a little spark jumping across there. It's kind of interesting. This is the tank right here. There's a gravity feed and no fuel pump. A lot of the fellas today have put a 6-volt fuel pump on it. It has a 6-volt electronic system. It's been kind of fun to sit in a seat that Edsel would have sat in. You can imagine that he was probably cut quite the image running around town in this thing.